Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is probably the most accurate as far as time that we've been. Usually, we like to say we don't like to give you a time, but today's a special guest, man. We got my boy Trent Steele. I'm gonna give you guys a little heads up. He can't show his face right now. I got some stuff going on, so it looks a little crazy. It's not a terrorist video. It's not anything like that. But my boy Trent, him and his wife started the Anti-Predator Project. Now, what the Anti-Predator Project is, it's a legally registered 501c3 nonprofit organization that is dedicated to combating human trafficking in the United States. They're a full-service nonprofit investigative agency that specializes in criminal investigations into individuals and organizations that are involved in human trafficking, the location and recovery of American children that have been kidnapped or sold on the black market, witness or victim protection, and missing children. They offer their services free of charge to anyone in need. No one should have to pay for their free. No one should have to pay for free assistance into the darkest times of their lives. Aside from investigative and protective services, Anti-Predator Project also helps to raise community awareness about the reality of human trafficking in the United States. Now, that's his intro, but I've known this man for I think going on 12 years. He's been on the podcast before. It's always interesting. I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking. I think Jonathan's my co-host obviously will be bringing in some questions, but I just kind of let him tell stories that honestly horrify me and hopefully enlighten you into the dangers of human trafficking, because we're seeing it more and more in social media and more on the news, and it's getting simply terrifying. I will let you know, again, he can't show his face right now. He's got some stuff going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, Trent Steele and Jonathan Vallejo on the podcast. What's going on, Trent?
Good for you guys though, because I'm looking good these days. Been hitting the gym. Didn't want to make you guys look bad. So, but no, the it's been about 3 years, since we've done this, and going back thinking how long we've known each other, it's been well over a decade, man. We've known each other for quite a while. It's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Absolutely. So, Trent, let's talk to us. Listen, we had a conversation 3 years ago. I still vividly remember the conversation that we had about the girl on the dark web. Which, side note, before we started this podcast, before you even jumped on, I called it the black internet, which I was like, man, I really can't say that because that's some racist shit. But I was like, I gotta say it because it's also funny. So we talked about that young lady that was terrorized and tortured and killed, that people were watching on the dark web because they wanted to see her obviously die, and they were like drilling into her head and stuff like that. Can you talk more about that? And situations like that, I guess, that you've seen since.
Absolutely. It's not one of my it was that case that got us introduced to what's going on the dark web. The dark web, for lack of better terms, is basically the unregulated part of the internet. Google, or you go to Yahoo now, you can type in, if you want to look at donuts or whatever it is, you can type in donuts and it'll give you a Miss Dunkin' Donuts, whatever it is. You'll get a bunch of options. The dark web is different in the fact that it's not regulated by anything like that. So you can't just go to the dark web browser, type in something, and boom, 50,000. When you go into the dark web, you've got to know specifically where you're going, and you've got to have an exact address. And you can always spot a dark web address because everything ends onion.onion. And that's how you recognize a dark. The browser that's used to go through the dark web are called Tor. That's the most common one. There's a couple other ones, but finding through that case, when hacking the photographs that were coming through on that particular case, was we identified several websites on the regular where they had chat room discuss this horrific stuff, whether it was torture, rape, kidnapping with children, whatever it may be, pick a horrible topic. and see them chatting away in these dialogue boxes, and then boom, all of a sudden the chatting goes away, and this address pops up with .onion on it. Well, we started grabbing and cataloging all of those wherever they went. We would grab them, copy and paste them, and put them in our dark web browser. And we started coming across everything from live child porn auctions to live pornography filmings to snuff. Name it, we started grabbing all of it. We cataloged a big list. That list we've since law enforcement in various ways to do what they can with it. The unfortunate part about the dark web and why the bad guys use it, whether it's for this type of stuff or whether it's for terrorism or drugs or some other illicit activities, because there's no accountability, and it's hard to identify who's behind a handle, who's behind a website. And the thing is if you're running something like a child auction, or if you're a terrorist and you're running a weapons auction or whatever it may be, you can say, well, we're going to leave the website up for 12 hours, and 12 hours will go by, and then boom, shut it down, and you can never find that website back up. And that's the very good part for the bad guys when it comes to the dark web, is it makes them almost impossible to find. So you'll see a lot of it. There was on the dark web a number of years back. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was basically everything bad. The drugs, child pornography, victims, like you name it, you could buy it on Silk Road. And the issue with Silk Road was it operated for years because they couldn't figure out how to take it down. They actually eventually formed a multinational law enforcement task force to take it down, and a Canadian analyst guy made one mistake, and this Canadian analyst found it. He used his real internet or his real email address back in the beginning when he set this thing up, and they were able to trace it all the way back through using that one email. Like everything else, the bad guys are getting better at what they do, and now with cryptocurrency becoming such a big thing, the dark web has just exploded with all sorts of horrific things when it comes to the darkest of the dark. Kidnap children, rape, torture, the snuff films. They use these girls till they turn 17, 18. The demographic that they were serving that's into young girls is no longer interested. So now they, for lack of better, they will make money off of that. So, and this all goes on the dark web every day, and it goes on with cryptocurrency transactions, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, you name it, they use it all. So the dark web is it's a horrible place. We're actually right now with the big game coming to Miami in February of 2020. We actually have our computer folks working to scrape the dark web and check the dark web for chatter, things of that nature that are going to point to any of the bad things that are going to be going on here in the Miami area during that particular period of time. Everything, child auctions to where you can buy underage girls to where you do anything. And I just spoke with my computer guy last night, and he actually just informed me that he's got quite a bit of stuff right now. He's already compiled about 10 or 15 events that we're going to keep an eye on come February when that goes down. So yeah, to answer your question, the dark web is it's a horrible place.
Wow. Hey, Trent, this is John, man. Just listening to that is pretty jaw dropping. And, I'm familiar with, the dark web and deep web. And ever since I started kind of messing around with Linux about a decade ago, how difficult is it, or has it been? Because you have the dark web and, anyone can, Benjamin and I, we can get on there, right? You just get the Tor browser, which is usually integrated into Firefox, get a VPN, and you can get on pretty easily. But not only the dark web, and now you have all these like communication apps like WhatsApp and Telegram and Signal that are encrypted. How difficult has that been, or has that made it for you guys to be able to track people down?
That's a fantastic question. It's very difficult, and it's not just difficult for us. It's become very difficult for law enforcement. You're seeing things like Telegram, and WhatsApp that have, in some cases, depending on, have DoD type, encryption put on it, which is nearly impossible to hack, nearly impossible to trace. So one thing, and we're developing, we know that the dark internet is it's not just the future home of bad guys, it's the current home of a lot of real bad guys right now. So working with my developing some technology that's going to allow us to trace the origins of cryptocurrency. I don't know how familiar you are with how crypto, et cetera, things like that. So we're working on developing some technology that's going to allow us to eventually be able to narrow down where the cryptocurrency came from, hopefully specifically enough to to try to help our situation on the dark web a little bit, and are going to share with law enforcement when we get it, because it's important that we try to erase the anonymity of these guys, whether it's on the dark web or whether it's using. The issue that we're seeing with the encrypted apps is a lot of them aren't based here in the United States. So unlike things like Twitter and Facebook, if law enforcement those particular websites, they can do so. But things like, for instance, things like Signal, it's the running joke on Signal is that it's run by somewhere in the Netherlands, right? Nobody knows who he is, where it's at. You can file all the American subpoenas you want to in the Netherlands, and they're going to just throw them straight in the garbage. So you can subpoena things like Signal all day long, and you're going to get nothing out of it. So that's been the real big issue. So we've had to get better at trying to infiltrate these groups when we get a chance. We've had to get better at beat them at their own craft, so to speak. So that's been the real challenge, because especially when it comes to trying to get into these child porn and child predator rings, because everyone got their own, the way they do business, their own way of talking, their own way of interacting with one another. And unless you're part of that world, unless your mind is wired that way, that weird way, it's very hard for the average person to be able to understand how they think, how to communicate. You stop and think, man, how do I need to word this stuff if you're talking with them via the internet? Because a normal person, a normal adult doesn't, and they're very good at picking out, no, they're lingo, and they're down. We've even gone to the lengths of bringing in military cryptologists to try to help us better understand how they talk, how they communicate, and what they can do. And they've been extremely helpful in doing that. But we're still learning. We're still trying to perfect our, with the anonymity of the dark web and the encrypted apps and everything else, being able to interact with these guys in a much more efficient fashion has become more important.
Wow. Yeah. Telegram, you mentioned Telegram, I think came up because I believe it was created in Russia, and it was a sort of an answer to WhatsApp not being as, I guess, user-friendly. Not user-friendly, but it wasn't as secretive as some people thought. So Telegram was an answer to that, and I don't think you'd be able to really subpoena something that's originating in Russia. But I mean, it's not even Telegram, right? It's just even like social media right now. Anyone can, you got a 10-year-old, 11-year-old can get on TikTok, can get on Snapchat, can get on a plethora of social media apps that aren't encrypted, that aren't anything. Anyone can access them. Has there been a huge like uptick on predators targeting, kids through these social media apps?
That's a fantastic question, and the answer is absolutely. And these guys, they're getting bolder by the day, and it's almost like they think they're not going to get caught, like they're untouchable. We actually just on back in July. I want to say it was somewhere around July, maybe early August. We had a 12-year-old girl down here that had been, the mom had called, and she had found out that her daughter was interacting with a guy that she met on, I can't remember the name of the app. It was like World Star. It wasn't the app you're thinking, but essentially, I'll have to check through my phone here while I'm talking, see if I can find the name of the app. But it was actually like a one of those sim apps where you can create like a simulated life.
Yeah.
The cover of that web page and the app, it states that the app is used for children 3 and up. Okay. So that's where these guys are going. They're creating. We found out this guy had created a false identity on this website, and when we started tracing where the phone number, where the account came from, we noticed that it was all set up on a voice over IP. There was nothing that it was impossible. So we're seeing a lot of this stuff go on, and it's not just TikTok. There's all sorts of predators that pop up on TikTok, and a lot of these kids get targeted there. But like I said, we're also seeing it on these more geared towards much younger children. And I suggest for the bad guys there is simply, well, nobody really is going to expect us to be here, so that's where we're going to go. So at the end of the day, I always tell parents, I don't want anybody to ever have to be that helicopter parent or kid all day in their business, anything like that. And today's have access to tablets and smartphones and things that we just didn't have growing up, which, when you were growing up, your parents lock the doors, lock the windows. We don't want the bad guys coming in the house, right, when we're not paying attention. The problem is the bad guys don't come in through the doors anymore. They don't come in through the windows anymore. Now they're coming in through the computer. They're coming in through the phone apps. So it's gotten much harder to regulate. And so I always recommend parents, listen, they need to do this. You don't need to be in every second of your child's business, but be aware of what they're doing. Be aware of who they're talking to. Be aware of what apps they're on. If they're on a certain age, if they're 8, 9, 10 years old, absolutely no reason they need to have unsupervised time on a tab phone or anything like that. If they're going to use it, then they need to use it in a common area where mom and dad are at, where there's somebody there that can see what they're doing. Because the most common thing that we run into, especially when I'm talking to parents, is I had no idea my kid was talking to that person online. I had no idea that my kid was doing this. The amount of times that we find out that kids were living completely different lives online versus what their parents thought they were living, it's astronomical. So I would just encourage parents to be more involved in your children's life, know what they're doing, know who they're interacting with, know who their friends are.
So when issues like that arise, as far as, like you talked about, like being like a helicopter parent and stuff like that, that also, I guess, also has to, what parental controls can you put on the phones or tablets or things like that? Can they filter out some of those things that are, I guess, foreign made, or is there no way to really control that? Because you could just log on through, because you guys talked about apps I never heard before, like Telegram and all these other things you were saying. I never heard of those things. So as the apps keep evolving and keep being put out there, how can technology catch up to that? And what are different agencies that you've worked with or spoken with, how are they approaching that whole situation?
Well, there's, depending on what kind of level of supervision you want to have with your child, there's a bunch of different routes you can go. There's different softwares you can actually upload on your child's phone that will mirror their phone to yours. So, if they get a text, you're going to get that same text on your phone. That see who's calling them. They log on to an app. There's several different companies that produce stuff like that. There's also secure software that you can put on your child's phone that will keep them from being able to download certain apps. So you can actually customize it and go in and say, listen, I don't want this particular device to have access to this app, and it'll develop a whole list of things they're not allowed to do. And then if they try to obtain that app or download that app, it'll block it and then send a notification to the parent that, listen, hey, so-and-so just tried to download this app, tried to do this, tablet or their mobile device. So there's different softwares. In fact, what I can do after this, because we've got a list of them that do stuff like that, I can actually post a list of softwares that parents can obtain on our, I can tweet it out, I can put it on our Facebook. We can put a list of it out there for parents to be able to have a look at. It just depends on what you want your child to be able to do. Because you would like to think that, the older my child gets, the more I should be able to trust them, things like that. But the weird thing is, we've worked cases before where we find out, 16, 17 was missing. And then we find out that they met some guy online or some person. They went to go meet him, and it becomes nearly impossible to stop. The biggest thing that you can do now, parents can do now, is just make sure that their kids understand the dangers that are out there. And you don't have to paint the world as this awful, horrible place, but you just need to make your kids understand that not everybody out there has their best interest in heart. Because we're a generation now where we're getting kids that, because of their backgrounds, know more about technology than their parents. So they're doing things online their parents can't even comprehend. Obviously, as the years go, that gap will shrink, right? Up where the kids know way their parents, so they're able to get away with a lot more. And it's not necessarily a good thing at the moment.
Yeah, but I couldn't agree more. I have two kids. I have a 19 and an 11-year-old, and I give my wife a hard time because when they were younger, especially the 11-year-old now, she wants to kind of monitor where he's going and where he's going to hang out. And I do too, but I also recall being that age and just getting on my bike and going to hang out with my friends. And I said, we got to give him a little bit of freedom. But like you said, I think the battleground is more so online and like in cyber. And so like some of the apps that I'm familiar with growing up and that I think are still around are Net Nanny, and there's another one called Mama Bear, I think. But even something as simple as Google Family, where you put it on your son or daughter's phone and you have it on your phone and you're able to see what apps they downloaded, when they downloaded them. I think Net Nanny and Q Studio tell you can see the messages, what apps they downloaded, what messages they're going back and forth. And that might be a little extreme, but I mean, those are the options that are out there. I have Google Family personally is what I use, which just tells me what apps they download. And so I'm aware of what apps he's using. And from time to time, I'll be like, hey, let's see what's going on. I'm not on it every day, but it just gives me awareness of what he's what he's getting into. I mean, as a parent, you still have to have, you're still a parent. You don't want to be a helicopter parent, but you still want to have that level of oversight of your kids, because at the end of the day, that's your role as a parent, to be able to kind of guide them in the right direction and let them know that, the world isn't a terrible place, but there are terrible people out there, and you got to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest problem that we're seeing in today's world, I think, is, well, I mean, it's one of the biggest problems that we're seeing in today's world is the fact that things are getting more expensive. Both parents are working out of the house now. Kids have a freedom than they used to, a lot more alone time. Instead of spending alone time and freedom with their friends, in the digital world, it's alone time and freedom with their digital devices, and they're interacting their social life as a device, and it's not hang out with their friends or anything like that. And we're also seeing the bad guys are even taking up residence in places like video games now, or pop up on Twitch and things of that nature. They're interacting with kids there and making friends there. It's going to be a deal where I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to filter them all out, which is why I think it's just important that parents have that talk with their kids and make them understand that, there's some bad people out there that will try to do some things and signs, the thing, the rule of thumb that's I've always told parents, I've always told kids, and it sticks true. It's never failed me, is if something doesn't seem right, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. And you should probably turn around and walk away. If it's too good to be true, especially when it comes to teenage girls, down here in Miami, one of the biggest girls is the modeling and the things of that nature, the music industry, the entertainment industry. And there's a lot of websites that offer girls modeling contracts, or, show up here for this photo shoot or do this. And start chasing down some of the addresses and email addresses and IP addresses behind the stuff. And we find out that it's a dark hole. It goes to nothing. Which means it was never a real business to start with. There was never anybody real behind it. So we're seeing a lot more of that. It's up to the parents, moving forward to help their kids understand. And it's such a very important role because, when I go and talk to schools, I tell them, the reason I'm here talking to you is because now I can keep something bad from happening to you. I can help you understand. I can keep something bad from happening. The chances of me being able to help you once something bad has happened, it goes almost nearly down to zero. I think the chances of recovering a missing child after 48 hours goes to like something around one in 1,000 or something. Exactly. So we try to deal with the kids at a level where they can understand if something bad happening in the first place.
So the social media and internet age has definitely been a huge thing into the human trafficking, right? But lately I've been seeing a lot of the news and been talking about it with my wife. Human trafficking and kidnapping still has gotten more aggressive in person, right? Where like in my area, like the Tampa Bay area, you'll see people that'll drive up to like stop somebody, be like, "Oh, I need some help putting this in my car or in my truck." Had like I think 6 or 7 instances in the last like 2-3 weeks about stuff like that. So I mean, obviously the human trafficking market, because it sounds weird saying it like that because it almost makes it seem not dangerous calling it a market, but that aspect of it is also that aggressive kidnapping is still popping up everywhere. Like I've had, like I said, too many instances throughout the news in the last couple of weeks. So what warning signs, what kind of tricks, I guess, can do these people do, and what have you heard from from the agencies that you work with? What are some things that you should look out for when you're out with your kid, or if you're a younger woman? You know what I mean? Like we've talked about it in the past, Trent, that what white, blonde haired, blue eyed woman is almost looked at as a unicorn in the human trafficking market because they're they're such in high demand, right? So what are some things you can look out for and some things to stay away from when you're out shopping and just having a regular day?
Well, that's kind of an because a lot of people don't believe that things like forceful abductions are a common thing. And let me be clear that forceful is not the most common form of human trafficking, and in reality they're probably not in the top 3, 4, 5, probably not even top. They're happening at a higher rate, it seems like, these days. And I don't know if it's necessarily that they're actually happening at a higher rate, they're just getting more coverage from the media and the news, and we're just more aware of them now. It's kind of a toss up, but we are seeing a little bit more of that, the more aggressive type stuff. And it's interesting depending on what part of the country. We've been tracking a trend across the Midwest now for years of girls that where they very similar in age, very similar in appearance, and they sing and nobody can explain what happened, where they went. There's never a body recovered. There's never so much as a shoelace ever found. And we don't know to attribute things like that, whether that's attributed to trafficking ring, whether that's attributed to some sort of a serial predator, serial killer, something along those lines. So we're not really sure what to attribute some of these forceful kidnappings to. We posted a video on Facebook, probably not of a child that was kidnapped. Right on, a doorbell cam caught the actual abduction, and the law enforcement was able to hotel, I think, later that night, and they kicked the door in and pulled in the corner. So we're seeing, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's an uptick in forceful abductions or if it's just an uptick in coverage that forceful abductions are getting. Starting to see more of it. And if you're a young woman, if you're a woman, things that you just need to be aware of, just be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of something that doesn't look right, that doesn't feel right. If you go out for a night with your friends, just make sure that you guys stay together. There's no need for any of you to leave alone. Stay together. Stay with your friends. One other thing that I highly recommend is you can go online and you can buy straws that change colors depending on if somebody's recommend that for all girls that go out that have a social life. You know, try not to leave your drink uncovered, try not to leave it unattended, but take some countermeasures. You know, if you come back and your straws change colors, maybe you shouldn't drink that. So there are different things you can do just to be aware of your surroundings, know what's going on around you, and just kind of know what's going on. Awareness and knowing who's around you, what's around you. Those are the best things that you can do. And you know, when it comes to things like parking your car, okay, park your car under. If you're going out at night, park your car under the street light. Okay, don't park it off in the dark corner of the parking lot. Park it as close to the front door, as close to an entrance as you can get. Make sure that it's well lit. You know, if you're going to a shopping mall, you got to park in a garage. Park towards the front part of the garage, near the entrance to the stores. Don't park anywhere near, you know, the back corner. Park near the elevators, near the stairwells, where people are going to be coming and going a lot. It's going to make you a much harder target to grab if there's a lot of witnesses, a lot of things going on. When you park dark in the deep dark corners and there's nobody around, it makes you a fairly appealing target. So just basic security measures about how to keep yourself safe. You know, I work with women that visits here in Miami that are in the foster care system and the social welfare system, and I tell them, listen, when you go to do a home visit, you know, especially this time of year when it starts getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when you park in some of these places, back into a parking place in case you got to leave fast. You got to dress nice for the office. You got to wear high heels. When you go out into the field, when you go and do home visits, wear flats, wear tennis shoes in case you got to run. Leave everything locked and move fast. Just basic security measures and basic awareness are the most important things that you can do.
Okay, well, talking about awareness, I guess what are some of the methods that these people use to recruit their victims or potential victims?
Well, right. If these guys would put most of their attention into being productive members of society, then they could probably be pretty successful guys. But they're smart about who they pick out. So let's start with what they look for. They look for people that are vulnerable to be coerced. Okay, so they look for people that come from bad homes. That's why foster kids are such a large demographic of kids that they get targeted and get brought into the sex trafficking world, because they come from broken homes. They're looking for somebody that's going to care about them. A lot of these girls, especially, looking for attention. So they look for people that come from broken places, bad places. Maybe are actually wildly successful dollars a year, but guess what? They work all the time. So their child's left home by themselves on the town. So They have everything they could want. The parents love them dearly, but the parents are gone all the time, so they don't get much attention. So what's that child looking for? That child's looking for somebody that's going to pay him attention because they're not getting any from anywhere else. So they're very smart about who they pick up. They're smart about who they target. They target people that are going to be easily coerced because they're looking for something. That's attention, whether it's nice things, whether it's money, pick something. And they hone in on that particular person and they fill that void in their life that they're missing, whether it's money. These kids that come from poor and broken homes, they'll take them out, they'll buy them nice gifts, they'll take them to the nice hotels, they'll take them to these nice restaurants, and in their head, listen, your parents don't care about you, your parents have never done this for you, and I'm doing this for you. The system's never helped you out. I'm helping you out. And so a lot of times these girls, they'll buy into the fact that the person actually loves them or cares about them, or, this guy beats the living daylights out of me, but guess what? He keeps a roof over my head, and my parents were never able to do that. I've never had to sleep under an overpass with this guy in bed with 5 broken ribs. And to them, that seems a little bit better of an option. It becomes a very warped psychology, and it becomes a very hard. And I know that I've taken me a long time to try to wrap my head around this type of stuff. Working in the foster care system when I first started to work, and these kids would come in and have horrible stories, right, about what their parents did to them: broken arms, broken ribs, burns, all sorts of stuff. They would run away. We would always recover them back at home with their parents, right? Because mom is always mom's dad, and there's nothing that can be done to change that. And same psychology starts to apply to guys like this, and especially when children come from broken homes or bad places, and these guys start off by filling this void. One of two things happens, right? They either they build this weird allegiance to this particular person because this person in some way, shape, matter, or form is giving them something that they want, that they need, they're not getting from anywhere else, whether perceived affection, love, money, whatever it is. And so these guys, they play on that and recruit these girls. These guys, to a certain extent, become masters at psychological warfare and masters of how to manipulate people. They become, for lack of better terms, profilers. They profile out of somebody and they learn how to work it against them. So those are a lot of things that they look for, that they want when they're trying to recruit a girl, is something that they can offer them that they don't have in the door. If you've got a kid that's from a happy home, that gets all the love and attention and everything that they want from someplace, start to recruit that particular child, because there's nothing you can offer them that they need, everything they want at home. So that's really kind of look for. They look for weaknesses, things they can exploit. Now, the other end of that is there are times when these sickos are working for particular. They want a child, they want a person, they want somebody that fits a certain physical description, right? Whether that's blonde hair, blue eyes, whether that's below a certain age, whether that's above a certain age, whatever it may be. And then they worry a lot less about if that child, that person is missing something in their life, and a lot less about what they can offer. And that's when you see in the human trafficking world, when abductions start becoming an issue. Then, because now, we need that person to grab it. So it goes both ways. But as far as the recruiting and the grooming process, kids that are missing something in their life, not just kids, but adult women that are missing something in their life, oftentimes become victims, are targeted because there's that weakness that people can exploit.
Yeah, that's crazy. Every time I'm listening to Trent talk, I'm always like processing like a horror movie, but it's real life. Like, all the shit he's saying is completely true and accurate, and it's just scary, man. So I wanted to jump back for a second.
for anybody who never heard the first podcast, talk about more so why you got started. I know we're like 40 minutes in, but it is, whatever. Talk about why you got started with this foundation, this organization. I know you were working in the I guess what you mentioned earlier. I can't think of the word now. You were working with social services and stuff like that. I know why you started it, because we talked about it ad nauseum several times. But what? Because a lot of people see issues in structure and situations, and they just kind of shrug their shoulders like, ah, well, I guess there's nothing I can do. What made you decide, along with your wife, to start the Anti-Predator Project?
Well, just to kind of give everybody a backstory of how I got into this, I'll keep it short. I started working with child welfare, child services, and around 2011, started work there. Job at the time at that agency was working with the teenagers, helping them transition from foster care, into adulthood. So, we worked with them on things like real world stuff, how to sign a lease, all this stuff. So I had the opportunity to work with young ladies in foster care that had become victims of trafficking, right? So we worked with them and their counselors and all sorts of stuff to help them, learn about healthy relationships and help them learn how to avoid stuff like that in the real world and how to help them spot the signs of guys that are trying to exploit them, things of that nature. So through that work, I had the opportunity to work with several young women that were victims of this crime, and they had horrible stories. Their stories were kind of stuff that keeps you up at night, right? You lose sleep over it. You hear about girls being burnt with cigarettes, and you hear about, people using their kids as collateral and all sorts of horrible things, and basically the worst parts of humanity, right? So I started talking with my wife about it, and we decided this was something that we were both pretty passionate about. And I think it doesn't matter what cause you get involved with, whether it's this, whether it's, animals or, some other cause, homelessness, things like that. Everybody's got a personal story, right? That affects them, which is why they got into it. Because believe me, you don't spend the amount of personal time, I know that we've spent, if it's something that you don't care about, if it's something that hasn't affected your life on a personal level, it happens. So it was something that we both were passionate about, that we both lost sleep over, and we thought that we had an opportunity to make a difference in these girls' lives in general, not just girls in the foster care system, but kids around the country and kids in in bad homes and bad places. And so we started this with me and her, and we worked with a couple of people from around here locally. And so we brought in, let me say this, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm smart enough to surround myself with the best people in the world. So I started reaching out to people, guys, had worked on it, and them in and making them a part of the organization. Then we started reaching out and we started making special operations world. We started bringing them in, and I've been truly blessed. Over the last, we've been doing this now since 2012. Since 2012, blessed by a bunch of guys that have resumes that would allow them to go out into the private sector and charge hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for their training. Volunteered, and I'm very blessed for that. I'm very thankful. I can't say enough about the people that volunteer with us. This is why we're able to open our office in Texas in January, because I've got a group of guys in Texas, some former military special operations guys that are so passionate about what we're doing and so passionate about our cause that they stepped up to the plate and said, listen, we've been working with you now for several years. We've worked some cases for you out here. Why don't we just open an office out here? We'll keep it under your name, under you're fighting. So to say that we've been blessed as this thing has gone to be surrounded by some fantastic people would be a complete understatement. We've met some great people that are doing some great things, and so that's kind of how this whole thing started. Was a experience that I had at work, and then it just kind of snowballed because the more I started learning about it, once I started learning about it in the foster care system, these other experts started learning that this isn't just a problem in the foster care system. This is a global problem. This is a $300 billion a year problem. This is next to drug trafficking. This is the second most profitable crime in the world. This is a huge problem that really doesn't get nearly the amount of attention it deserves. So, that's kind of the outline of how I got into it, how we got to where we're at today, and how fortunate we are to have the fantastic people that we have that are involved.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. A lot of people, like you said, they'll see something and they'll think to themselves, I wish I could do something, or I can't do anything about that, and not nearly enough people just decide to take that first step and find out what they can do. And the fact that you not only looked into it but decided to start this nonprofit to provide these services to people that are in need at no cost to them, that's amazing, man. You mentioned that this is a global problem, and we were talking before the show started how when I was stationed in Korea, I was in the army, and I was like a 20-year-old, and I had no idea what human trafficking was really. As a 19, 20-year-old, you're not really, I guess, looking into those issues. You're kind of consumed with what matters to you. But when I first got stationed there, that was probably one of the biggest things that was briefed to us, which was, a lot of human trafficking is occurring here, not just in Korea, but Asia in general. And how I saw it, or how it manifested itself, was the waitresses. They used to call them juicy girls, whatever it was. They were brought from Thailand, the Philippines, Russia, but they worked for a particular bar or bars, and the owners of those bars owned these women. And now, some of those recruiting things that they used were, like you said, they came from bad homes, or they had no money, and they were offered this great or better life. You're going to have a job if you come over here. And so they feed them this BS story. And then when they get to, in my case, where I was stationed in Korea, they find out that job that they were promised isn't that job. And now they're locked into a $5,000 contract that they got to work 2, 3, 4 years to pay off, so they can get their passport back, so they can get back to their family. And I saw that was in your face. That was briefed to us. We were aware of what was going on. And then when I got back to the States, not so much, and I know it's going on here in the States. I mean, obviously you're working with people to try to solve some of these cases. So it's obviously going on here, but it's not something that was at the forefront of the public here. How do we go about, us or even you, to make this an issue that more people care about?
Well, first of all, let me say that the story that you shared about how they get recruited commonly happens around the globe, right? One of the first cases that we ever worked was a young lady, a Ukrainian lady, probably 21, 22, maybe 23 years old. I was working at another PI agency here in Miami at the time. I happened to be in the office one day, and secretary comes back and gets me and says, hey, listen, we've got a young lady out in the front that's, she needs to talk to somebody. So I went out, we brought her back, and we talked to her, and come to find out she had gone to a job fair in her country. She's from the Ukraine, and was told, listen, come to this job to help you get money. We're going to help you come to the United States, live the American dream. You're going to be able to get your visa. You get residency. You're going to be able to send money back to your family. Eventually, you're going to be able to bring your family here for a better life, all sorts of stuff, right? So once again, you've got that element of these girls and these women that come from these countries there where everything's a struggle. Financially, it's a struggle. people don't have, they don't have an option. Most of them don't have options for housing. They've got children. So this sounds really appealing to them, right? They're going to be able to come to the United States. They're going to be able to make all sorts of money, bring their children and their parents here, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when she got here, she was picked up in the airport with about 4 or 5 other girls, and they got in the car. The minute the van door shut, a guy turns around, stuffs a 9mm in her face, and says, "Guess what? You work for us now. We need your passport. We need your IDs. We need, everything that you've got." And she says, "This is not our country. I don't have to do this here. This is America. The cops aren't corrupt here. I don't have to do this." So the guy opens the door and says, "Listen, you're free to go. You can get out of here. You can leave. And before you go, though," he says, "I need you to look at something." And he hands her a picture of her parents, and he hands her a picture of her son, and tells her, "Listen, you're free to go, but we know where they live. And if you get out of the car, they're not." So long story short, she was able to get out of the house. She got to our office, which I think maybe at the time she thought was a law enforcement office, because it was already always school badge emblem on the outside and stuff like that. So anyway, I said, "Listen, I think we can help you, but you've got to give me an opportunity." And she kept saying, "No, listen, I've got to go back. I've got to go back, and they're going to notice I'm gone." I said, "Okay." So I gave her one of my help you, but you've got to call me. You got to call me back. And I never heard back from that girl ever again after she left. And that was also one of the original stories about why all this started, because that case cost me a lot of sleep. So, point that happens a lot. Girls get recruited like that as well. Once again, they're offering them things that they don't have wherever they're from. So, it's also one of those things that unfortunately is a crime where, unless it affects you personally, you tend not to care about it, right? I had this conversation with one of my board members years ago after a fundraising deal that didn't go so well. I was frustrated, and I said, "Man, you know what? I don't understand why we can't raise any money." And he said, "Trent, listen, here's the deal." He said, "Unfortunately, what we do, people won't see the value in until they need your help." And as the years have gone on, and as time has gone, it's kind of true, right? Unless it affects you personally, very rarely do people pay attention. And then you've got the other faction of people, and we're seeing it now in Miami City, obviously with the big game coming in February, profits and clubs, et cetera, that for the most part don't do anything all year. Talk about human trafficking. It's never been a thought, but now we're coming up on this game and this big event, right? And that's kind of the hot button issue. So now all of a sudden they're doing this raising gains, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on flyers that people are just pick up and pitch in the trash anyway. And it's one of those deals where you also get a lot of people in this world, and I noticed this in the nonprofit world. One thing that it's taken me a long time to learn is that there are a lot of shady people in this world, and there are a lot of people that start these foundations and don't believe in a single word of what they're doing or how they're doing it, but they get to grandstand and say that they're doing this and they're doing that. Meanwhile, they're kids, and they're going out and exploiting other victims of groups here in town. And this is one thing that I'm always completely against. And I've had media outlets and news outlets contact me before and say, "Man, listen, can we talk to a couple of your victims? Can you talk about, what their names are?" No, I don't believe in re-exploiting my victims. One, and they're in a better place, I will never ever make them relive that part of their life. I will not only will I never make them relive that part of their life again, but I'm for sure not going to do it and make money off of it. And we're seeing a lot of that right now, especially with lots of stuff that's upsetting to me. These girls, they a lot of times girls don't even understand that they're being re-victimized. Understand that these quote unquote nonprofits, these charities that are supposed to be helping them, are standing on the shoulders of their tragedy to make money for them, so it's one of those things where it's very how serious and most disturbing stories I can, because people will remember that. I don't like to go out there and say, hey, listen, we're quote unquote raising awareness for human trafficking. No, I'm telling you about it. I'm telling you how bad it is. I'm telling you there's girls that are being kept in cages. I'm telling you there's girls whose families are being threatened halfway around the world, that this really happened. And yes, you're going to go home to your multi-million-dollar man and have a nice meal, but guess what? There's somebody that's not. There's somebody that's being victimized. But because you got to say, well, I handed out a flyer that said I'm raising awareness and sleep well at night. And that's kind of one of my biggest. My organizations have been doing this in Miami for years. And now you've got 50 of these other organizations that pop up overnight because of what's coming, because it's the new cause of the moment. And two make game kicks off, and it's no longer the cause of the moment. Won't say two words about it, their existence, probably. So there's a fine line between raising awareness and then raising awareness and making people aware of it the right way. And the right way is to let people know how serious of a problem this is, and how people are suffering, not only here in the United States, but globally involved in this problem. You're talking about a $300 billion a year global industry. That's disturbing. You're talking about the United States being one of the number one or number two destinations in the world for sex trafficking. Why? Because we have the most consumers. We have the most people over here that can afford, a lot of rich people over here that buy kids. Look at the Epstein case. Guys like that and all his cronies. Okay, so that's what people need to understand is that problem, and we need to raise awareness that way. We don't need to raise awareness by standing on the track of some of these victims to say, man, look what this poor person went through. Now give us money so we can help, but what are you really doing? So that's kind of the battle we fought, is how to raise awareness and how to get it across to people so they understand that this is a problem for everybody. This isn't a problem for third world countries. This isn't a problem for only the poor. This isn't a problem for, this is, and people need to understand.
Guess he got cut off there. Oh, not sure what happened. Is he back?
Lost the audio.
Lost the audio.
Okay, I'm back.
Trent, you there?
I'm back. So,
all right, there we go.
Yep, I'm there.
Okay.
So awareness just begins with getting people to understand.
Yeah, that anywhere, anytime something can happen, and just got to be alert to what your kids are doing on social media. So, man, like, this is like the second time, like, I'm literally like processing everything we're talking about as we're talking about it, and now it's like reprocessing, and it's insane, man. Obviously we got the big game coming up, which you mentioned several times, but there's also another area that's troublesome, which is Disney, the whole Disney area in Orlando. So, I mean, as prevalent as it is with kids coming in and out and stuff like that, I mean, I don't want to sound defeatist, right? But like, how much can you really do in those situations? Like, what, what I mean? Like, man, fuck, dude, it's just so much. $300 billion, man. That just seems like such a powerful level of money that you pay off the right people. You talk to, you know what I mean? You have people to turn a blind eye to shit like that. And then what? You know what I mean? Because we talked about it. Like, we had the Epstein stuff, and you know what I mean? You have so many powerful people that get involved in it on the other side that don't really care about it, only care about it situationally. How do you, with your nonprofit, combat to fight all of that stuff?
Well, as bad as it sounds, and when I first got into this, I didn't really have an understanding of the nonprofit world, how it worked. I didn't have an understanding of how much money was behind this particular problem. And so, when I go out and I speak at fundraising events and I talk to, potential donors, I put it in terms that they can understand, right? Every night across this country, there's hundreds of gas station clerks that get shot at gas stations, right? For $50 in a cash register. So that brings to the next question. If people are willing to do that over $50 in a cash register, what are people willing to do to protect a $300 billion a year global industry? And I think that we've gotten a pretty good look at how far and how bad this thing gets. The Epstein thing, if you put it in the sheer context of what it is, one of the world's richest, most powerful was literally, and it's been confirmed, was literally buying and selling children, bringing them to his private island, abusing them with all of his buddies, laughing about it. And we're talking about the most powerful people in the world, not just the United States, dignitaries, politicians from Europe. You're talking about businessmen, sitting politicians. And where's it gone? Where's the story gone? This should be front page news, paper, every single news outlet around the world, and for the most part, it's been squashed. Why? Because these guys pay people to make this go away. I mean, it's what has happened with the Epstein thing and why people aren't demanding justice, why people demanding something be done differently, because it's literally everything that's wrong with this situation. It's demonstrating how the elite, how the rich, how the powerful, literally they have by this problem and they pay everybody off, which also demonstrates how few people in this world we have that actually operate with a real moral code, right? With a real set of principles. Because there's a lot of people that, they'll say that this is wrong and this is bad, but hey, you give me $1 million, I'll forget about it. So to me, the Epstein situation epitomizes everything that's wrong in the world with trafficking and everything that's wrong in the world with how we deal with it, because we have an opportunity here to shut down some of the worst people, the most evil people on this planet. And we, for the most part, not only as a country, not only as media outlets in the United States, but globally, have allowed this problem to just ride off into the dark. And nobody has said hardly anything about it. And that's completely disheartening about where we're at as a society.
No, yeah, definitely. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that Epstein shit is crazy. Like, nobody even talks about it. Nobody brings it up. Nobody just got. Can you see my air quotes? Killed himself, and then just was never talked about again. Like, there's not proof of hundreds of people that he hung out with, pictures with him, videos, and all that stuff. So, Trent, man, let's just wrap. Let's tell the people where they can donate to your foundation, to your organization, help you out, how they can help any way they can and any way I can. You know, I'm always here for you, man. That's why I like having you on, because I believe in what you're fighting for. You know, I mean, you're one of my closest friends. We've been there. There was a night about 12 years ago that we went to the Hard Rock that y'all helped me out when I was in my darkest times, man. So anytime I can ever help you to get the word out, you could jump on, have you back on before the big game in a couple months. And 2 months, right? Because February, and we'll talk about it again to get it in the public eye as much as we possibly can. So just tell the people where they can find your information, how they can help, and all of that, man.
Absolutely. First of all, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the friendship. You've been a fantastic friend over the last several years. And if I remember right, on the trip to the Hard Rock, if it wasn't for the white guy being able to get drinks at the bar, none of y'all would have had a good time.
That is completely accurate.
Anyway,
that is completely accurate. Yeah.
Anyway, you can find us at our website, antipredatorproject.org. We're also on Facebook as well. We're on Twitter. We have Instagram. I don't really know what the Instagram is because my wife runs that. So I'll make sure and post that on our Facebook.
Fair enough.
But it's Facebook at Anti.
Lost you again.
Predator Project. Right now have a teaser going on through Custom Ink that runs through December 31st. That's helping us raise some money for the big game. So if you want to go and order a T-shirt, it's got our logo on it and our slogan on the back. If you want to go order that, that would be greatly appreciated. You get to help us out and get a pretty cool T-shirt in the process. And then also, too, I'd like to take a second and plug a couple of the partners that we're working with for the Super Bowl and let you know where you can check them out. We're working with a great called 611 Network. They're helping us get some support for the big game. We're actually doing a freedom rally with them the Friday before the big game. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I believe that's something like January 30th, I believe, something like that. We're doing a big freedom rally with them. They're a great group. They also work with a group called Ground Secure that does outreach. They help us with outreach. They help us to connect with the girls on the streets. A fantastic organization. So if you get a chance, check them out. 611 Network, Ground Secure as well. Great places, great people. We're blessed to have partnerships with people that are like-minded and that have the same end goal as us, and that's basically just being able to stomp this problem out of existence. So appreciate your time. Let's maybe do this one more time before the big game, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Whenever you want to jump back on and update us on any stories, obviously without any particulars and just what you've seen out there, any troubling trends, you can always reach out to me and I'll throw it on the podcast and I'll bring it up, man. As always, my brother, thank you very much. Jonathan, you got any last words, man?
Trent, it was great having you on, man. I'm glad that I finally got a chance to talk to you after listening to you about 3.5 years ago when you first went on the podcast with Ben. And, I've had firsthand experience seeing it when I was 19, 20. I'm a parent now, so it's something that's always at the forefront. And we just have to get the word out about this, whether it's sharing it through our social media accounts. That's the little things that we can do in order to get the word out. You're doing the big work on the ground. So that's awesome, man. Hopefully we'll get to talk again soon.
No, absolutely. I appreciate the time. And, you can always go to our Facebook page. We share study. We try to daily, at least, about human trafficking, different stories, what's going on, things like that. We tweet about it. We post stuff on our Instagram. So check us out on all our social media platforms and feel free to reshare and repost. And thank you for your time, guys. I really.
All right, man. Thank you so much. All right, guys. That concludes the podcast. Thank you so much for watching, listening, restreaming, listening anywhere you want. All right, man. Appreciate it. Peace.